it is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place, and had worked for a long stretch of time before we, the United States, pulled out of it. So I'm hopeful that bombing stops and ordinary people are no longer suffering as a consequence of the war. And then in retrospect, it's a reminder that on a lot of difficult foreign policy problems, the notion that we can just bully our way or bomb our way to solutions may sometimes seem appealing, but the fact of the matter is that taking the time to explore diplomacy and exhaust the possibilities of coming up with deals that don't solve 100% of the problem, but solve 80, 90% of the problem, while avoiding the necessity of going to war. You'd think we would have learned that lesson by now, but it seems like every so often we have to relearn that lesson again.
Paying an enemy $1.7 billion is not my idea of stopping an enemy that has vowed the destruction of the United States is the kind of diplomacy we should engage in. I asked Grok a few questions. Let's get their retrospect.
During Barack Obama's presidency, 2009 to 2017, the U.S. conducted extensive military operations with a heavy emphasis on drone strikes and targeted counterterrorism actions, alongside larger conventional campaigns. Obama inherited the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He ordered a troop surge in Afghanistan, peaking around 100,000 U.S. forces before drawing down, while completing the withdrawal of combat troops from Iraq in 2011. He later re-engaged in Iraq and expanded into Syria in 2014 against ISIS, with thousands of airstrikes and advisory troops. Signature approach, expanded drone program. Obama dramatically ramped up targeted killings via armed drones, especially in non-battlefield areas. His administration authorized hundreds of strikes. Estimates range from 540 to 563 in Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia alone, far exceeding the Bush era. Pakistan, intense campaign against al-Qaeda and Taliban militants in tribal areas, starting with strikes just days into his term. Hundreds of strikes occurred here. Yemen and Somalia, strikes against al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP, and al-Shabaab, including high-profile ones like the 2011 killing of U.S. citizen Anwar al-Awlaki. Overall toll, per one CFR summary, accounted 442 strikes killed an estimated 3,797 people, including 324 civilians. Independent estimates of civilian deaths vary and are often higher. The program relied on Terror Tuesdays for high-level approvals, with Obama personally involved in many decisions. It was justified under the 2001 AUMF against al-Qaeda and associated forces, emphasizing precision to minimize U.S. troop risk. Other major actions: Bin Laden raid, 2011. Obama authorized the Navy SEAL operation in Abbottabad, Pakistan, that killed Osama bin Laden. Libya, 2011. U.S.-led NATO intervention with airstrikes to enforce a no-fly zone and protect civilians during the uprising against Muammar Gaddafi. This contributed to regime change, but without ground troops. Against ISIS, 2014 onward. Airstrikes in Iraq and Syria, special operations, and support for local forces. Over 10,000 strikes were conducted by the end of his term. Other actions against pirates, special forces raids, and operations in places like Somalia and Libya. Obama's approach shifted toward leading from behind, remote warfare via drones and air power, and avoiding large ground commitments after the Iraq-Afghanistan surges. Supporters praised it for disrupting terrorist networks with lower U.S. casualties. Critics highlighted civilian deaths, blowback risks, lack of congressional oversight in some cases, and expansion of executive power. This is a high-level overview. Specific operations involved complex intelligence, legal debates, and ongoing scrutiny. For deeper dives on any country or incident, let me know. Approximately 2,500 U.S. troops were killed during Barack Obama's presidency, 2009 to 2017, according to multiple analyses of Department of Defense data. This includes both hostile action, combat, and non-hostile deaths, accidents, illness, self-inflicted, etc., among active duty service members. Here's a breakdown. Combat hostile deaths were concentrated in Afghanistan due to the 2009 to 2010 troop surge, and, to a lesser extent, Iraq and operations against ISIS later in his term. Over 1,700 U.S. personnel died in Afghanistan during Obama's watch, with peaks in 2009, 311, and 2010, 498. Total deaths across all causes averaged around 1,400 to 1,500 per year in that era, per DoD DCAS data, leading to the logient 2,500 figure over 8 years. Context: Obama inherited ongoing wars with nearly 5,000 total U.S. deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan up to his inauguration. He drew down forces in Iraq. Combat mission ended 2010, full withdrawal 2011, but surged in Afghanistan before gradual reductions. Later actions included airstrikes and advisory roles against ISIS in Iraq-Syria, starting in 2014, with relatively fewer U.S. ground casualties. These numbers reflect official DoD statistics via the Defense Casualty Analysis System, DCAS. Broader totals, including contractors or post-service deaths, are higher, but not typically counted as soldiers lost during a presidency. The human cost was significant, despite the shift toward drone strikes and limited ground engagements. Let me know if you'd like yearly breakdowns or comparisons to other administrations. During Donald Trump's first presidency, 2017 to 2021, far fewer U.S. service members were killed compared to Barack Obama's 2 terms, 2009 to 2017. Quick comparison: active duty military deaths, Obama 8 years, amounted 2,500 total deaths, all causes including combat, accidents, illness, suicides, etc. This included a major Afghanistan surge with heavy combat losses early on. Trump, 4 years, roughly 1,000 to 1,200 plus total deaths, extrapolating from annual averages of amount 1,000 to 1,300 in that period, with lower combat involvement. Combat deaths were significantly reduced. Combat hostile action context: Obama era, over 1,700 in Afghanistan alone, peaks of 311 in 2009 and 498 in 2010, plus Iraq drawdown and early anti-ISIS operations. Combat remained a major driver initially. Trump era, much lower, around 45 to 57 hostile deaths in Afghanistan-Iraq theaters, total a material 131 in those operations, including non-hostile. Trump oversaw continued drawdowns, the 2020 Doha Agreement with the Taliban, and no large-scale ground surges. Most deaths were non-combat, accidents, suicides, illness. Key factors: Obama inherited and managed peak post-9/11 operations with a troop surge. Trump benefited from prior drawdowns and focused on targeted operations with fewer U.S. boots on the ground. Both administrations used extensive air power and special forces, reducing conventional ground casualties over time. Non-hostile deaths, which make up the majority of total military fatalities in peacetime, low-intensity periods, remained relatively consistent year to year across administrations. These figures come primarily from DoD's Defense Casualty Analysis System, DCAS. Exact year-by-year totals can vary slightly by source due to classifications, but the overall gap is clear. For more granular yearly data or specific operations, I can pull additional details.